Well, if the topic is scale for this meeting today, then we can think about the design opportunity regarding scale in several ways. One way, which we'll come back to a little bit perhaps in our conversation, is that the work that the Foundation has done to sort of try to figure out, well, where are all the designers and how many of them, has led them to data which is quite remarkable, actually. 160 million designers out in the world. And when we say designers, we mean the people who are making the decisions about what form products and services and all of the associated processes around them take as they get developed and put out into the world. I like to think of the definition of design being the one that Herbert Simon, the Nobel laureate economist, came up with in the 50s when he said, whenever we are shaping the world to meet our needs, so we're designing. And so design is a very broad topic. But if the opportunity is for 160 million designers to change what they do, then clearly the scale of the impact of that could be significant. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what the opportunity is, what the obstacles are, where the bright spots are, and try to imagine what it might be like to scale circular and the circular economy across that community of designers. And help us do that, we have two other folks up on stage here. Here on my, well, I guess you're both in front of me, so I can't use right and left, but anyway, Marcus Fairs, founder and editor-in-chief of Dezeen magazine, or Dezeen, it's not Dezeen magazine, it's Dezeen, the online digital design magazine, I think the largest now in the circular viewership in the world, I think, yes.
Yeah, it's an online architecture and design magazine, and a significant proportion of those 180 million or whatever designers you talked about visit our site to get news about what's happening in architecture and design.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. And Dharan Kirupanantham, screwed that up, I knew I
Great job.
Who is the member of the Adidas innovation team called Future, and one of the team that was responsible for that shoe that we were just hearing about, Future Craft Loop, I think was the name of the project.
That's right.
So we're going to actually dive into that a little bit in a second. So to get us started, Marcus, you are already interacting with a significant number of a proportion of this 160 million designers. What level of understanding do you think there is today amongst designers about the circular economy, about the actions that they are going to need to take if we're going to significantly change the way we do things?
Well, first of all, I think that if you take the design community to include architects and designers and people who engaged in building everything from mobile phones to cities and infrastructure, I think the design community is super passionate and super concerned about doing the right thing, especially the younger generation. When you visit design schools or you see graduation shows, I mean, environmental issues are probably the most important topic that they're trying to address. Of course, they're doing it in small studios of 1 person, 2 person, people and 3 people. The question of how aware are they of what the circular economy is, I think, is a more complex one, because I think, as a journalist, we've come up against this all the time. It's very difficult to explain these things to people, and it's very hard for them to go somewhere to get solid information that they can actually make use of. The circular economy, we were talking about this just now. What's the difference between the circular economy and a closed loop? Well, in terms of form, they're both this, right? But are they the same thing? Some research papers treat them indiscriminately and interchangeably. Some define them as different things. The same with things like, what is a bioplastic? If it's a bioplastic, does it mean it's biodegradable? So designers are confused. They want to use the right materials. They want to push things forward. But I would say there is a kind of information gap between that's preventing them from making effective decisions. Now, we're part of the solution to that, but we're confused too quite a lot of the time.
Well, it's interesting. You're saying actually something very similar to what Wolfgang from Condé Nast was talking about this morning, which is the role of media in actually defining the terms and actually creating some agreement and shared understanding so that we know what we're working on. Do you see that as something that Dezeen and other media organizations could be doing, should be doing?
Yes, precisely. So we want, our ambition as a design magazine at Dezeen is to set the global agenda. So we take feedback from our readers, we see what's going on, and we identify themes. The environment, circular economy, climate change, that big topic is the single most important thing that we face as a civilization, but the single most important thing to designers. So therefore, we're trying to push forward the agenda. But it's hard, because it's very easy to make lazy assumptions that a bioplastic is biodegradable, that the ocean cleanup is going to solve the problems of ocean plastic. I learned yesterday that ocean plastic is a registered trademark. So the whole area is a bit of a minefield. That doesn't mean we're pessimistic, but we do have a duty to inform, to explain, and often to bust the bullshit, to be honest, that comes with quite easy solutions that turn out not to be true.
It also means that creative people, designers, architects, also have to be technically aware, right? They have to understand, we have to understand how, what these materials do, how these processes work in order to successfully innovate with them. And at some level, that's always been the case with design, and you can go back to the first industrial revolution, that designers experimented with the use of plastics or experimented with the use of other manufacturing processes quite early on. But it does seem that connection between creativity and technology is still important when it comes to the circular economy.
Yeah, exactly. And the science is complicated, but also science isn't a static thing. Science moves forward. So on the one hand, with ocean plastic or plastic pollution in general, everyone is aware that there's a problem, but we don't know quite how big the problem is. Like, okay, so microplastics are getting inside of fish. There's no definitive scientific answer to whether that's a problem or not yet. And in the meantime, there's a kind of huge public expectation that we need to get rid of plastic in the ocean. So people think that by not having a plastic straw in their Starbucks, they're somehow contributing to that. So again, it's an easy solution that while the problem is over here getting bigger, the solution that people focus on, and often the media, in their understandable desire to simplify things, point people in the wrong direction.
But we clearly need to learn through experimentation.
Yes, exactly. So we do have to go through this cycle of, there's the science, is it correct? Has someone got a counterpoint to that? So you're constantly pushing forward our understanding.
Yeah. So Dharan, I mean, we're talking about experimentation. The project that you all have just completed seems to me to be a great example of both technical innovation, extreme technical innovation, figuring out how to take one material and manipulate it in enough different ways that you can make a whole shoe out of it, and creative experimentation. I mean, in terms of exploring, well, how do you represent that idea? What does it mean to have, I just love the idea that you made this sort of pristine white shoe, and we talking earlier about what will it look like by the time it's been back through the cycle three or four times. But tell us a little bit about how that project played out and what you've learned from it, and how you would extend those experiences out to what you think other designers might do.
Well, it's kind of surreal, like walking onto the stage and talking about this now to you guys, because it's been going on for 10 years. Like 10 years we've been speaking to PhDs, scientists, professors, other geeks like me to figure out just how are we going to do this. And when I joined the company 6 years ago, the concept was so clean and just easy to get. Like a one material shoe, a recyclable shoe, something you don't throw away. Like whichever way you looked at it, the product kind of made sense. And it was only when we unpacked that we realized this is really hard. It wasn't just about the product, but it was like, how do you make that? How do you design a process that you can make that product? And then how do you remake it? And it's great that it's considered a bright spot. It really is. I think to get to that bright spot, there are so many other stars or bright spots that you have to pass along the way. And the reason why it took 10 years is because it took other technologies and things to come to the fore. And I'll pick out a couple just to demonstrate. So this this midsole, this soft cushy bit. We call it Boost. It's made of this amazing material called TPU, thermoplastic polyurethane. And that was 2013 when we brought that to the market with our partners. And that was the time we decided, okay, this is the material we're going to mold and shape and take to the extremes, and that's what it's going to be made from. And then there was still the question of how do we make it? And I think that's where we realized the foundations were really rocky. Like the platforms that we've been used to for building shoes, building everything, they just don't work with a circular economy. So we were working at the time on something called Speed Factory, where we were really reconsidering how do you make a shoe. And out of that came some technologies like glueless assembly, ways of bringing parts together like never before. And kind of with those two bright spots, we finally had the foundation and platform to build something like this. And I think the interesting thing like this about Futurecraft Loop is this is kind of only the start of the journey now. Yeah. Like 10 years is only the start, and hopefully the guys in the audience as well will help us get to the next stage.
So maybe these projects should be better described as moonshots rather than bright spots. I mean, a 10-year effort, technical innovation, design innovation, process innovation, presumably business innovation too, because as you look forward to see, well, how can we build markets with these products? How can we make it has to be profitable? I mean, I imagine there's experimentation that's going on at the business level also.
Oh, totally. And I think you kind of hit two important points there. The moonshot, I think, is very important. It has to make money. Like we're still, I don't know how many times it's been said today, but we're not a charity. And that experimentation even comes about when you have both of those things, I think. And maybe to preface this, I'll go back to the chapter before Loop. So this is a bright spot in our sustainability journey, but even before that, it was around 2015 where we were talking to a company called Parley, who trademarked ocean plastic, by the way, wasn't us. And we were experimenting with the idea of taking that ocean plastic and turning it into products like what I'm wearing on my feet now. And there's an interesting anecdote about how that came to life. So Eric Liedtke, our head of global brands, was presenting at the UN on ocean plastic. And just 2 days before, our head of creative direction just bumped into him in the hotel lobby and gave him a shoe. So this is made of ocean plastic. And the team had hustled like over a week and really come together. And I don't think they do this on everything. It's a project with purpose, and they came together. They built a compelling demonstration of, like, this is how you can make money. Like, this is an object of desire. Eric showed that at the UN and said, we didn't know he was going to say this, but he said, next year you're going to be able to buy this in a store. So he sat down.
You had to make money on it.
Exactly. So it's nice when he turns the screw a little bit, but he set that moonshot. And I think when those two things play in harmony, you get experimentation, but experimentation towards a goal and a goal with purpose.
Yeah. So I've always felt that design is motivated as much by inspiration as it is by specific. I mean, we're all trying to meet the needs of people when we're designing, but designers make the leap because they're inspired in some way. And I wonder, Marcus, what are we going to do to increase the level of inspiration that's out there for designers to respond to? Do you think that there are mechanisms we should be using, or are there examples that we're not talking about, or what might we do to kind of inspire this community of designers to innovate?
Well, if we're talking about bright spots, I mean, besides the very bright spot we're actually sitting in right now, the bright spot is that there is the inspiration, there is the desire, there is the passion and the interest amongst hundreds of thousands, if not millions of designers, like I said, particularly the young ones. They want to do the right thing. I think the opportunity or the gap is giving them information that allows them to make informed decisions, that allows them to demonstrate their intelligence, and then allows them to team up with, partner with the larger organizations that can help those ideas scale if they turn out to be good ideas. Because believe me, the the bright spot is a huge level of engagement and interest and passion amongst particularly young designers. It just needs to be nurtured, encouraged, and fed.
Yeah, yeah. And it strikes me that one of the other great powers of design is to sort of take the future and bring it to the present, to illustrate things that could be, even if they're not quite there yet. And in some ways, this project is a bit like that, right? I mean, it's kind of nearly ready for prime time, but I guess there's more evolution to come before it becomes large scale. How do we encourage more companies to be as enlightened as Adidas clearly is, and many of the other companies that are here today, to make use of design not only to work on the current problems, but also to explore what the future could be like?
I don't know, actually.
Well, you've got a good example, right? I mean, you have a team of 70 designers, or designers and engineers and innovators in your team who, I think your job is all about future innovation, right?
And I think that's what we realized. Like, even with that group of far greater minds than myself, we still didn't know how to get this juggernaut moving, like this supply chain, this foundation that we're all building things from, and kind of like, do we wait until everything's polished and finished, or do we just stick our neck out and see what happens? And that's what we're doing. Like, we don't actually know what we're doing in this. We're kind of building it as we go along. And what we found is our consumers really dig that. Like, they don't mind that we have all the answers. They don't mind that we're still asking questions. And what they really enjoy is that they're part of that journey. And I think that's something that designers and creatives also dig, because we work on these things for years and no one gets to see them, and I think we're now in a world where we can do this in a much more communal way.
Is that one of the opportunities?
I'll make another point as well. Like, we talked about moonshots before. I think as a society, as a civilization, we need even more ambitious moonshots. We need science fiction. We've kind of lost, I think we've given up as a creative society in a way. Where's the big vision? Remember in the 60s, all the movies, all the children's cartoons, all the Ideal Home exhibition, it was like, robot servants rushing around. We'd all live in pods and have jetpacks. Like, where's our vision? We now know what the apocalypse that we potentially face as a civilization. Got people like Elon Musk, buggering off to Mars. But what about the rest of us? Like, what is the vision that could be presented that would save civilization? I was talking to a guy the other day who's got a concept of half-world, which is like you move all the people into the smallest possible place, and then all the farmland that's needed to support them is on one half of the planet. The other half is rewilded. That's a science fiction vision that we can all respond to.
Yeah. We need to fall in love with the future again.
Yeah.
We've sort of fallen out of love with the future.
Yeah, it's
very
terrifying.
good reason. It's terrifying.
And just to add to that, I think there are reasons, like, from a corporate background, and I asked our designers about this before coming here, and a big part of it is the system is so optimized as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything is geared towards speed and cost effectiveness. It's just very hard to move that.
So I wonder if we don't need many, many more teams like yours who have got the permission and the time to spend 10 years, if that's what it takes, to figure out how to do these really difficult technical things. We need more teams like yours operating throughout the economy. We need to be engaged with communities. I think that's another point you were making, which I think is very interesting. Seems to be one of the optimistic pieces of the circular economy is that it can reconnect all of us with the things we make and the way we make them, whereas the industrial economy separated us from those things. There are still some aspects of it which will need to be separate, but it's an opportunity to bring kind of all of us as citizens and the way things are made together in some way. I mean,
but also it's a bit dry, to be honest. Like the circular economy, it sounds like a chemical equation. Like, where does that take us? Why is it going to be so much more exciting once this circular economy is in place? And then everyone will be like, yeah, I want to get on that rocket.
So that's the storytelling part, right? I mean, that's the other thing design and creativity brings to the world is storytelling and narratives and that's a little bit what we're talking about with the foundation as we think about, well, if there are 160 million designers in the world, we like to at least touch 80 million of them and get them more aware and excited by the concept of circular. And then we'd love to see 20 million of them actually changing the way they design. And I think the only way that's gonna happen is if we create optimistic, inspirational, exciting kind of versions of the future, if we invest in explorations of both technical innovations as well as creative innovations, as well as business innovations, is we basically build a new kind of design community, which is what you do so well. I mean, how do we? I think we all need to feel like we're all working together towards some purpose. So the goal is by 2025 that we'll have at least 20 million designers doing some things differently from the way that they're doing them today. You're already a kind of a beacon for that with your team. I think Marcus, you're showing the way with the projects that you explore on Dezeen and hopefully the kind of dialogue that can start to happen through the media. So I'd like to thank you both very much for bringing some thoughts about how design can get to scale and how we make circular design the design of the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, Joe.
Thank you to our panel. So again, we do have a question from Twitter, which will be, while we've got you, we'll throw it at you, which is from Jen, who asks, is it fair to expect designers to have that level of technical knowledge? I presume when it's talking about coming to materials and understanding the properties and material selection. So maybe, do you want to have a stab at it?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll ask both of you to have a quick response to that because you're in the middle of it. Is it fair to expect you to have all that technical knowledge?
Yes and no is the cop-out answer. Right now, not. And I think it comes down to, it is education. And what dawned on us through this process was how little we knew about how products are made. And it's kind of, it's an unnerving experience to go to a factory and realize, like, shit, I'm part of this problem. And ultimately, it is on us to go out there and take that onus and say, we should know about this. And we don't need to know everything, but you should be aware at least of how you fit into what will be the circular economy.
Marcus, do you think we can educate, inform?
It's not fair to expect designers to be able to reach the scientific conclusions on their own. Of course not. But the information should be there somewhere for them to find more easily. I think that's one of the problems. In big companies that have research teams, you can go down and speak to the research guy. This is the problem I want to solve with my new shoe. What material have you got, or what we can develop? Individual designers don't have that resource, and at the moment, there's nowhere. I mean, a designer told me about her journey of trying to introducing a new beauty product. She wanted to make the packaging as sustainable and circular as possible. And in the end, she decided to make it out of glass because she could not find a plastic that would do the job.
It was there, but she just couldn't find the information.
Well, maybe it's there, maybe it isn't, but she just was like, I can't spend 3 years trying to find the right chemist or whatever.
Great, thank you.
Good.
Something just to add to that, I think you said it at the beginning. I think we maybe also have to redefine what a designer is, what a creative is. When we do things now, it's like designer next to an engineer, and we don't know exactly where the line ends. And I think that's also helping move things forward.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Tim, Marcus, and Darren.
Thank you.